Hello everyone, I'm Lydia Ruth. Welcome to Homemaking Radio, and I found a place to sit that wasn't piled with things here in the mess, so I can talk to you again today. One of my grandchildren told me when I was fussing over myself saying, I've got, wait till you get to be my age and you get all this crepey skin and everything, and this young boy said, well, Grandma, if you smile, the lines on your lips don't show. So I decided maybe I should laugh more. Now, ladies, today I would like you to, if you're watching this on the channel on YouTube, please click the link in the description box and let it take you to the page on which I have embedded this video so that you can see all the other things that go with it, such as what I was wearing and the apron and everything else. And I hope that anything that I say here, you'll remember that you've got to adjust things to suit your family and yourself. These are just my observations and my ideas, and you'll have to adapt to your own and your own needs and your own family. Your schedule will be different than mine. And so I decided that I would just spend some time talking in spite of the fact that so much needs to be done around here. And I had a friend once that was a real particular about making certain areas of her house neat and tidy so she could find things, because she said it was essential to her emotional health and her stability and her feeling of well-being to be able to go to bed at night knowing where things were if she had to get up in the night. And I thought that's a great idea. I want to live like that someday, and I might amount to something one day. And there are several movies that I wanted to tell you about, because on occasion when I'm feeling tired or just don't feel really up to doing much, I will watch some of the good videos I have collected, and one of them was about a woman who said that life just wasn't turning out well for her, and she had to find a different way of doing things because the way that she was doing them wasn't working out. And those are some of my favorite types of stories, and my descendants always tell me stories are so good for us because they show us how things can go wrong, but then they can work out, maybe in a different way, maybe not in the way we wanted to, or might seem second best to what we had planned. One of those stories was by Jeanette Oak, and it was called, I don't know if you pronounce it Okie or Oak, but she's a Canadian author. She wrote lots of stories, and they seem a little fantastic and over the top, but I'm sure that one of the reasons that they were written was to show people that you could pick up if you had had a disaster. So I remembered in Pride and Prejudice where Mrs. Bennet just broke down and had a meltdown over Lydia running away from home and marrying someone at Gretna Green. I guess that's where people ran away to get married without their parents' blessings. And her brother said, "Sister, calm yourself." She'd made herself sick over it. She just was in bed and running a fan over her face, and she was so upset. And she said, "There's flutterings in my heart and flutterings everywhere, and I have pains here and pains there." Yes, your emotional reaction to things can cause you to be not feel well. And so one of the things we want to do as homemakers is to have some kind of stability or base that we can always depend on to be the same when other people try to mess up everything, try to mess up your life, or try to disappoint you. And so I talk a little bit about some of those things, and that's why some of these movies I enjoy watching. And one of them was Love Comes Softly by Jeanette Oak. I like to watch it every autumn because it has a lot of autumn scenes in it as far as I can tell, and the music seems to be very autumny. But a young woman she's starting out a new life in the West, and during the pioneer times, she comes out on a horse and wagon, and things just fall apart for her, and she has to take a different direction in her life. And it just shows how it plays out. It might be rather fantastic. I don't even know if it's based on truth, but these are good things. And then also the other one that I really liked, some of these movies are just getting older because there's so many new ones coming out now, but these are very good. And the other one that I really liked, I think these are great for the homemaker. I like to listen to some of these things while I do really tedious work, like kitchen work, things that need to be washed, put away, and cleaned. And it really helps me to have things like that to listen to when there aren't people around. And I was listening to Princess Cut the other day. I don't really watch them anymore. I can just listen to them. Some of them are posted free on YouTube, so you can listen to them. And what I liked about that was, here was a young woman who lived at home with her parents, but she was getting disappointed, 3, 4, 5 times by young men that she had hoped to become engaged to and get married and have children and have her own home. And but what I liked about it is that this girl did not go out. In the world. They're farm, all of these are farm movies. I call them my plaid shirt movies. And they don't spend very much on costumes because they all, the person that costumes all the actors and actresses probably buys all the plaid shirts at the Walmart. And her parents suggested she just take a different tack, take a turn in a different direction and quit looking for someone and start developing a relation at home with her brothers, which she did. And life changed for her in such a nice way and much better than the way she was trying to make it work. And so I like movies like that. Another old movie that I really liked back in the olden days was called Auntie Mame. Now that's a bit strange, and you wouldn't want children to watch it. It had a bit few innuendos in it. I mean, there was no anything explicit or anything. I don't think there was even any swearing. I don't know, but just still you need to watch it yourself alone. But it was a woman who things did not work well for her. She had some tragedies in her life, and I hope that we will all be like, receive the initial shock, do our crying and repenting and sorrow, and then look to see what God's going to bring us next. Like some of these characters, I don't know if they're based on truth or what, but if you remember back when the Jane Austen novels were written, I think it was the late 1700s, I'm not sure. But Mrs. Bennet, she was just devastated and humiliated by this daughter, Lydia, running away from home, off with a soldier, and some curiosity seeker, I can't remember who it was, maybe it was the minister, came in to visit the Bennets and ask about the straying sister, and the girls just froze. They were so mortified at the question, and Elizabeth said, "We're enduring it as best we can." So I hope that whatever suffering that any of you have, whether your house is in a jumble or someone has just told you you're crazy, or I heard about a girl that wasn't happy at home, and she told her parents they were mentally ill, and she left, but she ended up in more trouble than they ever were because she was just not living right. And but I hope whatever comes your way, that you will do as Elizabeth said and say, "We are enduring it as best we can." And I wanted to read something about stability. I don't have my little don't have my little dictionary with me. I might have to get up and go get it. This is from 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 17. That you be not carried away with the error of lawless people and lose your own stability. I hadn't seen that in there before. Lose your own stability. You start watching, you start looking at the news, listening to it, seeing it pop up on your phone or your email, or just, I mean, all you have to do is go to the grocery store, and if you're trying to stay away from it, it's all over on the magazines, and you can't hardly get away with it. Or even if you're not involved in any kind of reading, any kind of media, or using your phone, somebody's going to tell you what the latest scare is, what the latest shock is, and you can lose your feeling of well-being, your feeling of stability. And the homemaker especially needs to be stable, because some of us need to be calm. You know, our husbands go out there into the world and they deal with all kinds of problems, plus the constant burden of making sure that they keep their jobs, and that they do well, and that they don't get in any kind of difficulty. And so some of us need to be the ones that stay home, like we homemakers. One of us needs to be calm. And it's like in that story called When Queens Ride By, where this lady was explaining to this other lady that her husband had a job, and he thought that he could save some money by hiring her as one of his main people or something. And she said no, because one of us has to stay home and keep calm and keep everything calm. We can't both be burdened with all these things. And so I really liked this. I hadn't really seen this before, that you are not carried away with the error of lawless people and lose your own stability, but grow. See, I always like the Bible because it shows a negative on one side and then a positive on the other, as an anecdote of what to do. Instead, it says, but grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So, to grow in the knowledge and the grace means you're going to have to learn things like self-motivation and self-control, and you're going to have to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and you start to grow in the knowledge of these things, and pretty soon you feel more stability in your home. I had my little dictionary here, and I was actually going to look up that word, stability, so you could know more about it. But in general, when you think of something that's stable, it means it doesn't wobble. It means it doesn't move every time there's any kind of stress put on it. And so that is one thing we want to grow in, because nothing has changed under the sun. And even back when Jane Austen wrote Pride and Prejudice, Mrs. Bennet had a meltdown, and she cracked up over her daughter. And this is just part of life. But we want to be gracious and graceful. And also, one of the problems today is trying to keep your house and keep a level atmosphere, you know, so that there's not a bunch of hype going on around us and a lot of tension, but to make it a pleasant place. And so we have to think of these things as homemakers. And one of the first things I always tell people to do when they come here to this class is to get dressed and fix yourself up as best you can, because it's such an instant, easy, cheap way to change things. It can help change the mind a great deal, and it just doesn't cost anything really except effort on your part, maybe a little water, some clean clothes, and it can change your whole attitude towards your home and towards your responsibility, and never to give up your responsibility. And so I'm going to start out with a few other things that I have been reading. And one of them is that I find this is designed for you to go for a walk, take a nap, or do something quite tedious at home. I always think there's certain rooms that I find hard to concentrate on, and I like to listen to something. And of course I have my books to listen to, and other things that I have an interest in. And I have a few guilty pleasures. I have a few interests that you know nothing about, that you might be shocked to know, but maybe not. And someday I'll tell you some of the things you don't know about me and don't need to know, really. Things that I like to read about or figure out or follow. And I wanted to read to you out of one of Eric Sloane's book. And I think this does have something to do with the home and with homemaking. So if you haven't begun, go get dressed and just do the very best you can, and spend a little time in the mirror. Try to wipe away the discouragement and of life. And I warned you last time, stay away from the latest news. They always have something, don't they? It never quits. They will never come on and say life is going well, everything is fine, unless of course they want you to vote for them, and then they will tell you that everything is fine. But just don't pay so much attention to that. Pay attention to the state of your own life and your own home. That's the news things that you listen to just make you hate your life and make you hate your country, make you hate everything else, and lose your enthusiasm for everything. And in the olden days, they used to have places you could go, retreats you could go to, where you get away from all of that. This is even before the phones and the internet. You could go away to these retreats where you would just enjoy fresh air and country and no news, no anything, no work, nothing. And we have to figure out how to do that in our own homes and what makes them so pleasant and retreat-like. And it all depends on you, the homemaker. And so I wanted to read a little bit about writing, because I had been reading this book, Once Upon a Time, by Eric Sloane, and I had introduced you to the Eric Sloane books. This one was called America Yesterday, and he just every now and then, once in a while, I'll read these written in the 1940s about how things were made or things were done. And I ran across this little thing about writing, and I have been writing a list of things I needed to do, and that's another thing you need to do after you get dressed. Write your list. And I want to share my teacup today. It's by a company called Brewed to a Tea. Brewed to a Tea, and it kind of goes with my dress. And this is an outfit I made from a piece of fabric at the Hobby Lobby by Brother Sister Designs, which is one of their companies that they use in that store, in the sewing section. And I'll try to get a picture of it for you. And it talked about how paper used to be made from cloth. Very interesting, isn't it? And it's always good to broaden your knowledge, because it reduces the amount of stress that you receive. It kind of gives you something to grip onto if you learn something new. And I always say, if you are feeling low, and remember that book called North and South about the cotton mills in England, written by Elizabeth Gaskell, the same one that wrote Wives and Daughters. And Margaret's mother always had, quote, low spirits. And Mrs. Thornton, who was John Thornton's mother, was always saying her and her low spirits. She says, we don't have time for low spirits here in the North, because we are busy making cotton. We are busy with our mills. We are busy, and we are busy with our businesses, and that this part of the country is known for business, and so they don't have time for low spirits. And so to put your mind to something else, it's often very difficult if something is overwhelming you. But I was reading about these papers because I was making a list, and that's the next thing you need to do. Make a list, have a cup of something hot to drink, walk around your house. I have been on a 1-mile walk with Lucy Wyndham Reed in London, England, on YouTube. And she does these exercises, like she walks around a city or a town, but we stay home and do it. And she also just goes for 1-mile walks in her own house, and she sneaks in little movements and exercises while we go on these walks. And so I've been there, I've done that, and I have gotten dressed, I've cleaned the kitchen, I've read a little bit. And don't forget to make a list of your prayers, and particularly pray for your family. Who is going to pray for them? Do you know anybody that's praying for your children? Then you need to begin to pray for your children. Do you know anybody who's praying for anybody else in your family? That's why you need to make it a priority to list them for your prayers, because you know, millions of people are praying for the president or the country or all the other disasters that are supposedly going on. But who's praying for you and for your house and for that things might go well with you? So remember to do that. And it's amazing how it can change the stability in your mind and in your home. And so I had been making these lists, and they're so messy. And I was just remembering that when we used to go to the antique stores back in the day, sometimes there would be a little frame, and it would have an old list in it, and written in Victorian handwriting, be quite authentic. And it would have other things that were written, and what careful effort people went to make a grocery list. And I ran across one of my mother-in-law's grocery lists, one of the first ones. We found it in one of her old drawers, and there wasn't anything out of order in that grocery list. It was her best handwriting, and they took time to write properly. And I think that's really important, that everything we write has to have so much importance and meaning, and it doesn't. I'm trying to change my ways. So I was reading this thing by Eric Sloan about the writing and paper. So we'll start with the paper here. He says, he talked about how nothing was thrown away, and he said nothing was wasted. And he said, today, many acres of a forest will be used in the daily edition of one newspaper. I read somewhere that the reason the modern newspaper was so huge was that they were being charged to print by the sheet, so they just made the sheet of paper bigger, which I found totally ridiculous and unnecessary. They sure did mess up a house, those big newspapers, and then you'd get the ink all over your hands. I'm glad they're kind of gone or gotten smaller. Today, many acres of a forest will be used in the daily edition of one newspaper. Most waste paper today is dumped in the ocean. Well, I didn't know that. But when paper was made of rags, it was never destroyed. I haven't looked into how that was done, but whatever notes you wrote or did in school or as homework were kept and carefully sewed together into booklet form. And that's why I think that when I write something, I would like it to be worth saving and putting in a book. And that's one of the things I like about this new scrapbook movement, where you buy really nice papers and pieces and take your time and write something meaningful in them, these little journals. The result, of course, was that even casual notes were done in fine hand. So that would be like your grocery list, knowing that they were to be saved. I have heard ladies say that they kept their first schedule book that they made for their home when they were first married, and they still have it had all the dates in it and all the things that they did. I could never keep mine. They were so messy, and I would circle things, cross out things, and rewrite things, and they weren't very carefully done. And I think one of those reasons is that life was in just too much of a hurry, trying to keep other people's schedules, etc. Recently, a teacher made a test example requesting her class to keep their lessons for a week and sew them into such old-fashioned booklets. The result was the best handwriting the class had ever done, for nothing had been scribbled carelessly, and through frugality, good writing was reborn. That is very interesting, and part of, I think, the problem with the haste in which we write and the messiness is our pens. They flow so quickly and easily over the paper. We don't have to stop and dip them in again. And I remember the dip pens, do you, back in the day, before the ballpoint became so prolific. Some of you who are vital can remember we did have the dip pens, and the schools did not like us to use them because they were messy and you could always spill the ink, so they made us use pencils. And I just thought you might like to know that. And then when you make a list, if you're having what they call just feeling down, you know, low spirits is what Mrs. Called it in North and South, Thornton, Mrs. Thornton. If you're having trouble keeping your mood higher, keeping your mood up, then I would suggest you write your list carefully. Whatever it is, your to-do list or your grocery list, to write it carefully. Don't write it on your phone. Write it on paper, and then that action of writing, careful writing, actually affects the brain, and it puts part of you on paper. Now, I wanted to also find out why it is that homemakers sometimes get so discouraged and they want to be anywhere but their home. They just want to escape the home, and they feel that the home has more stress in it than somewhere else. And if you analyze it, you may find that there's something like light or sound or smell or color or neatness or organization that is more soothing somewhere out there in the commercial world. And so that's what you change at home. You translate the things that you like out there and bring it home, the atmosphere. And often it's things that are important to seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and just a kind of the atmosphere of the home, as I call it. And those things can all be changed, and often just by housekeeping. Housekeeping changes a lot of things, and can also increase our contentment. One of the things I think increases and contributes to contentment at home is you think of recreation or recreation, vacation, holiday, and then translate it into everyday at home. Just that feeling of relaxation. Learn to relax at home even when you are working, doing something that you're responsible for. Learn to relax at home. This is so important because if you start doing that, if you start practicing that, then you don't feel like you're just going to be tense until it's time for a holiday. You just go ahead and do the holiday feeling in your home, the recreative things at home. I talked about that in the previous video, that you have to recreate rather than recreate. And so learn a song, look upward. You know, one of the things you can do to lift sad spirits or low spirits is just to lift up your arms, lift up your hands, lift up your arms. That's pretty amazing. Or get up, move, walk around. You might not think that it helps, but before you know it, before you even realize it, it has changed things. And then making a list helps because it organizes your thoughts, making a list of things to do. So finishing things too. I have a list of things that need to be finished. And exercise. Like I said, I walked with Lucy today, but to make exercise more useful and satisfying, if you can memorize your exercises, I thought I had a paper here. Oh yes, I copied this from those books, Man in Demand and Christian Charm course written by Emily and Wayne. I'm trying to think what their last name was. And they'd written these books back in the 60s for young people. And so I had copied the exercises from them and basically found out that most exercises are just parts of these basic exercises. And I just have memorized them, so I don't need to look at them anymore. And the beauty of memorizing 6 exercises is now you can add a song to them. So if you know a hymn or a song you like, or you just make up a song as you go, then you can sing as you go. And I've just learned that just works a different part of your brain, and it just helps so much. And so I wanted to tell you the bread story again because you might not have heard this before. And it was an allegory that was going around in the 1980s when people of my generation became interested in homeschooling. I just don't know how it caught on the way that it did, because I just decided that I was going to do it, and I wasn't following anybody. There wasn't a movement, and then I found out that there were other people doing it too. So it must have been something that the Lord put on our heart to open our eyes to many years ago. And I read a story that someone had written in a homeschool magazine that she had published, and I happened to get a copy of it. And she had written a story about government school. And you know, in those days you had to be kind of quiet about what you were doing because you could end up in court or something if you were, or some kind of trouble if you were homeschooling. And so she wrote a story about bread, and it was about a mother who baked her own bread because she did not trust the ingredients in the bread that was bought at the store. It just didn't have the nutrients in it that she wanted. It didn't have the right kind of flour or other ingredients, and so she wanted her children to have nutritious food, and she wanted to make her own bread. But it's just a story. But the government said, no, you have to get in the bread line and you have to get the free government bread. You know, a lot of us, we pride ourselves that we're not on welfare, we're not on any public assistance or anything. But if you are sending your children to public school, you really are on public assistance, because it is a government school. Is paid for. Of course, it's paid for by people like us out of our taxes because we have to pay school taxes. But she wasn't in the line to get the bread, and her children weren't with her, and so she was reported, or they looked at the list of people that were supposed to be getting this free government bread, and she wasn't there, so they called her up and asked her why she wasn't there. And she said, well, I'm making my own bread now. And they sent somebody out to inspect her and talk to her, inspect her place and everything, and her children were real healthy and strong, and she tried to show the difference between the government bread and the inferiority of it and her bread. And she finally convinced them, I think, that her bread was superior for her children. And so this was a story that this woman told to encourage us to talk about the quality of education at home compared to the quality of government education. It's more watered down because it's for supposed to suit everybody. But at home, it's personal and it's individual, and you are tailor-made for each child. You know, some might do better with one subject and not another. And in public schools, it's one size fits all. It's for everybody. Now, they will say they're, you know, catering to one kind or another, but it's not like that because it's still their choices, the government's choices. So I wanted to repeat that story to you, see what you could get out of it for your life at home. And even if you're not homeschooling, I'm homeschooling you, and so you can learn and get something from this. So what I wanted to do was take the mystery away from homeschooling for those of you that didn't get to be homeschooled or did not homeschool your children, that you could have some knowledge of it. So what is it? What's it like? What's in the books? What do you believe? How do you approach it? And so when you listen to all my videos, I'm just doing what I would have done at home with my children when I was homeschooling them. And so now I want to go on to things that you can do at home to lift up your mood. It's really important, I think, to rest. And I remember growing up, if we were cranky and we started making trouble, or we were grouchy and pushing our mood off on everyone else, we had to go back to bed. Do you remember that? Those of you who are of a vital age, we don't say old age here, we don't say elderly, we say vital, because our vitals are still working, you know, still breathing, and nothing is, you know, everything is normal. There's still a pulse, so our vitals are still working, so we're vital. And remember, we used to have to go back to bed. And yeah, sometimes we'd fall back asleep, but when we got up, we were in a much better mood. So that's one thing that could be wrong. Maybe you need to go back to bed for a little while and then start over. Just start over afterwards. I don't care what time it is. Go back to bed for a while. Get up, take your shower or bath, redress, and start over. And you might get, you know, squeeze some time out of the day to do something that's beneficial to you and others. And then the other thing that I wanted to make sure to emphasize, and the Bible does speak about this, and that is your digestion and your, you know, the way that your body works and your elimination. And a lot of people are anxious or have a low mood because of indigestion. And so eat carefully, drink carefully, thoughtfully, and in that book, Wives and Daughters, there was a chapter, I don't have that book with me either, chapter 7, I believe, was about Molly's first experience in someone else's dining room. And she said she really, at that moment, you know, watching them and how they ate and the formality of it, and then how quickly they had to get up and go do something else, missed the lingering at her own table in her father's house. Just missed because they would sit around for a long time and talk. And our meals are not as connected socially or emotionally anymore to our families, and to our food doesn't have the meaning that it used to have, and it may be affecting our minds and our digestion. So I suggest you have your family favorite recipes that you know your children like, and hang on to them even if you get tired of them, because they might have a connection, an emotional effect on them. I was listening to a man in Jordan. I believe his family had moved to Jordan many years ago, and he was from Turkey. And he was telling this reporter that how they had kept their culture in a foreign country. And he said one of the reasons is our food. And he explained what they ate, how it was cooked, where they got the ingredients, and how this food binded them all together as family. And I think it's worth thinking about. And we're living an era here where everybody's afraid of food, and we've been told, you know, this is not good for you and everything. But I believe if it's homemade and it's done with the best ingredients, most food is okay. And so that's another thing that could be wrong, is your digestion if you have a low feeling. That's one of the reasons I think that tea time is so important, because it slows us down. And I remember the first tea I ever had, and how different I was 16, and I remember how different I felt afterwards, that we had spent that, I believe, half an hour with this tea with someone, and determined that it was the most wonderful, almost miraculous time I had ever spent. And the memory of it has stayed with me because of the lift that it gave me. And of course, we had food with it, and we weren't being so depleted until late that day. And so it's also a way of slowing down too. So another thing you can do is learn a song or sing a song or make up one, and write one thought or phrase in your journal. And you can get a journal at the dollar store. You can just make your own, put some paper together and punch holes in it and tie it with a rope or ribbon. And these mini journals are real popular now. I haven't made one yet, and I really wanted to, but didn't have time to when the grandchildren came. I wanted them to help me make one, and we just didn't have time to get around to it. But to write one thought in that, and to make a list, and to do it. And there's the problem. Therein lies the problem. I was at the grocery store not long ago, and the lady that was at the checkout, that was checking me out, said, "Did you notice we had our seasonal things in?" And it was like scented things for fall and candles and things like that. And I just jokingly said, "I'm not allowed in that section." And what I meant was, I'm restraining myself from going over there and getting things like that. And she didn't see the irony in it or the joke, and she said, "Well, I don't have to obey anybody. I can do whatever I want. I don't have any restrictions on my life." And all I meant was, I'm trying to forbid myself from going over to that section of the store. And but some people just get the wrong idea, you know. So I had to explain that I make a lot of rules for myself, because I don't always obey them. I have this list that I'm trying to make myself do. And so far, I'm feeling great, because I have 3 troubling sections in my home or outside. I've got a back patio porch with a few things that need to be decided what to do with, and then I have another storage area, and I also have kitchen drawers and things that need to be gone through. And so what I've done is said, I'm just going to do one thing in one room, one of these areas every day. And so far, I feel pretty good about it. It's working, and it's slow. And I also wanted to tell you how to make, you've seen my aprons, and you can make aprons. There's patterns for them, and then we used to make them without patterns back in the old days. Everyone knew how to do it. But there is a way you can make a no-sew apron for yourself if you need one, and that is, you just take a shirt that has long sleeves, and it's a longer shirt, and you just tie it around your waist. But if you want an apron that goes over your shoulders and just covers this part, because in my experience, where the soil goes is right over all over this part, is you take some old dress you don't want anymore. You don't have to sew anything, but if it has ties on it, it's handy. You cut it down the back, and you cut off the sleeves, and you make kind of a apron that goes over your clothes, and you just tie it in the back. And we've done that many times in our family, where a dress has just had it. It's had enough. So we just cut it up the back and take off the sleeves. You know, you don't even need to take off the sleeves. If you want to protect your sleeves, you can also keep the sleeves on and then slip it on and tie it around the back. Okay, let's see what else I've got here. I think, ladies, that I'm coming to the end of what I need to speak about. Of course, every now and then I'll run across a note and say, oh, I forgot to tell them about that. But there's not going to be any test. So you don't really need to know this stuff. Now, I wanted to end it because on people, because we always enjoy that, you know, where we kind of observe how other people are and things that can maybe cause trouble at home or with you socially. And I have warned you several times about people in the family or other places that create these hasty, sharp replies. You've barely got something out of your mouth and somebody answers so quickly, it's a shock. It almost like cuts you off. And I know that there are certain cultures that will not answer quickly. They just wait and let some space go by. They're not nervous about the empty airspace, you know, like they are on radio or TV. They let it, and then they will answer carefully, but they won't answer suddenly. And that's probably the way we need to be. That would be more scriptural, wouldn't it? And then there's another habit that I've noticed is people who are quick to contradict. If you say, I'm just so happy for these nice spring days, they'll say, I'm not. And they'll have a reason. It might be legitimate. But it throws, we used to call that throwing cold water or raining on your parade. And that's just a downer, isn't it? So I'll tell you what to do about it. And then there's the other thing that's going on right now. This happened years ago. It was a common expression, but it's coming back. And after you have said something or someone has asked you something and you've answered, they say in a dismissive tone, well, anyway. I don't know what that is, but in our family, we were very plain people when I was growing up, and we didn't have things like that. I mean, we weren't allowed to be sarcastic or make hasty replies and develop little sayings like that, like, well, anyway. No, that just wasn't part of it. And we weren't allowed to snap back in a contradictory way. If you said it's a nice day, someone else say it's not, you know. And so I wanted to give you just a little idea of how to handle this. Be careful how you say things. Be careful what you say and imagine somebody, what they were going to do with it. If you say it's a nice day and someone else you know predictably is going to contradict you, then you don't have to say it that way. You don't have to state it's a nice day, because what they're doing is they're looking at you as though you are broadcasting something as an authority over it, and it might not be a nice day for somebody else. So you need to be careful how you say it, how you phrase it, and don't say it at all around these types of people. You can't stop them. You can't cure them, especially if they're adults. Unless they're your children, you really can't correct them, you can't stop them, and you can't cure them. They're just going to be stinkers no matter what. And so, and if they're that way with you, they're probably that way in the marketplace, at home, at the store. They just talk like that all the time. And you can't stop them. But you can limit your words, limit your communication. All you have to do, instead of saying it's a nice day, is look like you think it is a nice day. Just the expression on your face. Don't give them a chance to contradict you. And what I've noticed with these types of people is they never have anything original or of their own to say. They wouldn't come in and say it's a nice day. They wait till someone else says it, and then they quickly contradict, because that's how they're used to conversing. They think they're just communicating. They just think they're having conversation, and they don't understand. Now, some of them maybe know they're being contrary and know that they are throwing cold water on you, but most of the time I think people just don't have the skill to say anything. They wait till someone else says something, and then they start to try to create conversation by saying, no, it's not. And then it starts an argument which they think is a conversation, but it's most unpleasant. So as we become more vital, we can become more mysterious. They'll just think we're mysterious if we don't speak. And you can develop that Mona Lisa smile and look wise. And just don't make a comment. Don't say. Just limit your words. Pretend you have a word bank, and you only have so many words for the day, and you can't use them up. And I looked back on a day that I had where I talked too much, and I went back and tried to analyze what I could have eliminated, and how it could have kept the cortisol away from me, the stress hormone. If I had not said so much, and not gone into a narrative about something, or tried to be too informative, and many of us are just sort of feel awkward around people that think that we should say much more and explain and elaborate on everything. But like I said in that scripture from Matthew, where Jesus said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Now, he was talking about oaths, and oaths were quite a common thing in that time. But what about using that to keep yourself out of trouble as a vital person and keep the stress low by just saying yes or no and leaving it at that? And I know in conversation classes that we've been in over the years when I was younger, that in order to stimulate conversation, you weren't supposed to just say yes or no. You would say, yes, and I like that too. No, that's not really, but as we get more vital, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying yes or no, and just doing it kindly. But if you're having trouble with people who cannot help themselves, who are quick to contradict, who make hasty, sharp replies, and dismiss you with the well anyway, and seem to always want to be smarter or something like that, but don't have anything to say. They wait until you say it, and then they clamp down on you. So I just wondered about that, if that would be a great experiment. I've been looking back on the days when I had more stress and decided that as a vital person, I don't need to be collecting more of that cortisol, so I'm going to start saying yes or no, or and not trying to explain or elaborate to make people feel more comfortable, and preserving my words and pretending there's a word bank so that I can come here and talk to you instead. So ladies, I hope that you had a good time today, that you had a nice walk, and that you've taken a few notes and determined how to go about things when they don't go so well. With many of us, it's trying to get control of the clutter and the house, keeping up with things, and especially if you, like me, eat at home, prepare things from what they call scratch, from the natural ingredients. It's more time consuming. It makes more cleanup, and so a lot of our life is spent, a lot of our day is spent around the food preparation. And but we must take time for ourselves, for rest, and it's nice to go to bed in the Jane Austen way. In the Jane Austen diet, he showed how, in this book, how the Austenites, or the period of the Regency, that they would often go to bed or start getting ready for bed as early as 4 o'clock in the evening, and that they just wound down. And then instead of winding up, they would wind down. And that is an important part of rest. It's like digestion. An important part of digestion is the taste. It's the saliva glands. It's the first thing that you eat, and how it prepares your stomach for something heavier, and it's just a whole lot of things, and it's the time you take. Well, it's the same with rest, I think, and sleep. You can start early, wind down, get ready, look forward to bed. When we were young, back in the olden days, bedtime was actually kind of fun, and our parents would order us from the catalogs the best sleepwear, pajamas, etc. to sleep in, and it was kind of fun to get ready and change your clothes and get into bed, and the parents would come, read a story, have your prayers, and of course, as we got older, sometimes we would stay awake and read, and so just getting ready and gradually getting into the sleep mode, I think, is better. We will experiment with ourselves because we don't have anything to lose right now at our vital ages. So ladies, I hope that this has helped you today, and if not, I hope you had a good walk or a good rest listening to it, and I hope to have more tomorrow or another day. So, oh, and I will tell you one of my secret hobbies and enjoyment, and I don't know if it matters or not, but ever since I lived in Australia when I was 16 years old, I've always liked rugby. So I wanted you to know that sometimes I do watch that, and I don't think I've mentioned it before. I might have mentioned it last time, but that is something that shocks people. But it shouldn't. I just like it a lot. I like it better than football here, but I thought you might like to know. So I'll talk to you later, and God bless, and stay close to Christ. Bye.